Allan Kilavuka is the Group Managing Director and CEO of Kenya Airways. Good morning, Allan.
Good morning, Eric.
Are you growing horns or getting your ears cut off?
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
Getting your ears cut off. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you, Eric.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I would imagine that you haven't been sleeping much, but, well, that's the nature of the job, okay? So we're not going to say sorry for that. Pole sana lakini.
No, I've tried to put my head down, but it's been a tough weekend. Very tough weekend.
Has it?
Yeah.
You released a statement yesterday in which you said that you had gotten some flights back on air, some 4 flights, and you're saying that you expect some more flights this week, from today. What's the current status as we speak?
So today we have 17 flights operating. Of course, that is still suboptimal. We have a few pilots who have called in to operate the flights. And of course, there are pilots who never went on this unlawful strike. So the limited number of pilots who are operating those flights are proceeding. What we expect is, as I was just checking the status, more and more pilots are calling in to say that they want to operate. So we expect this trend to continue. And as we continue to get more pilots back on duty, then of course we continue to increase our frequencies.
Sorry, say the number again. 17 or 19 flights?
19 flights.
19 flights.
Sorry,
19 flights this morning.
Yeah.
All of them, are they local, international?
Some are local.
Intra-Africa?
Some are local. Some are international. I think there is London, I believe. There is also Johannesburg.
Okay.
And a few others. I can't remember all of them. Yeah.
And these are unionizable pilots who are actually flying this?
Yes. Remember, in CALPA, all pilots, including manager pilots, are members of CALPA.
Okay.
Right? So, yes, indeed, a large majority of those people who are flying those are managers, but we also have members of CALPA who are not managers, who are also helping us and doing the patriotic thing of trying to help us evacuate a lot of the stranded passengers here.
How many people are stranded at JKIA?
It is difficult to tell because they keep coming, increasing and decreasing. But as at yesterday, we had 500 guests in various hotels. I estimate there's probably another 100 or so who are stuck at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How about those who wanted to come back into the country or are stuck in various other capitals?
So if you look at the entire network, we have impacted about 12,000 passengers. So across the network, those ones who wanted to come, those ones who wanted to leave, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. And this, before I get to the question, just a clarification, is that those numbers of folks that we're looking at who have to spend the night or 2 or 4 in a hotel, that bill is being covered by Kenya Airways?
Yes.
Okay.
It's being covered by Kenya Airways.
Until they are on a plane to where they need to go.
That's correct.
All right. So I think the question here that everybody's asking is, what on earth is going on, Allan? There are many things that we have heard. There is a CBA that is in place, is it not? And it would appear as though the pilots are complaining about the elements of the CBA having not been affected to date. Is there truth in that, at the very least?
Yeah. So I think it's important for me to state the facts so that it's clear. Mm-hmm. Now, they have the pilot union or pilot association has raised several elements. They have raised several grievances, actually 4, in buckets of 4.
Yep.
Okay. Some of those elements relate to the CBA, so that is completely true. Mm-hmm. Some of them have absolutely nothing to do with the CBA. Okay. For example, their demand that I exit the organization has nothing to do with the CBA, but we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. Others do have an association with the CBA and terms and conditions of service. So they raised grievances sometime this month. Initially, first of all, we have been having discussions around these elements, okay, trying to get a solution and so on and so forth. But at some point, they disagreed. They were not happy with my negotiating team. So what did they do? They wrote a strike notice, 14-day strike notice. Okay. So I wrote back through the ministry and said, we have not exhausted the dispute resolution mechanism. So there was no point at that point to go on strike. Let's talk about it. And the ministry said, yes, that's true. They invited us to have a discussion around those elements. They refused to attend that meeting. At the same time, the Kotu Secretary General, Dr. Francis Atwoli, offered to mediate. He said, let me come, okay? Because he is a unionist, so he understands the union. So he came, sat with the union, and we sat on this side, and we talked about all those elements. And Dr. Atwoli said to them, these elements are not worth a strike. These elements, and first of all, we addressed some of them, okay? Maybe not to their satisfaction, we addressed. So Atwoli said, listen, you don't need to go on strike on these issues. These are issues that are resolvable, okay? And the element, this last one that you're asking for the sacking of the CEO and other people is not within your remit, okay? That is something outside your remit. It's not in your CBA, it's nothing. And they've tried this before. They did this in 2016. So now they're trying it again, okay? So these other ones, yeah, absolutely. And the management has given you some counter offers. So let's talk about it. No need to go on strike. They refuse to listen. They refuse to heed that. And
the clock is still running.
And the clock is still running. So Atwoli said, okay, sawa. The Ministry of... So the Ministry of Transport now invited us, and then also invited the Ministry of Labour. Two CSS, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Labour. Okay? The claim that CALP officials were making is that we were, first of all, unreachable, not willing to compromise and all that, right? So we subjected ourselves to a neutral person. And all this time, Atwoli has been there, Ministry has offered, and now two CSS. They spent with us 5 hours. In fact, I felt very embarrassed. 5 hours. Two CSS, one PS, the Commissioner of Labour, to try and talk through those issues. Again, we went through each and every item. The ministry told us, can you give concessions? We said, yes. Let's give that concession. Let's give this concession. Let's give this concession. This is outside the remit. This is outside the remit. The ministry themselves said, indeed, the termination or the removal of the CEO and managers is completely outside the remit. That one is not something you're supposed to be discussing in a strike. 5 hours, they completely refused. They have not moved 1 inch from their position earlier. Okay? In the meantime, they are sending notices and messages to their members saying, the management has given 90% to our demands. So it's only 10%. The question we are asking is, if that were true, why not come back to work, right? And continue negotiating on the 10% that you're saying has not been given to you. Why are you continuing on the strike? What is the real intention of this strike? Exactly. At the same time, we have told them, some of the, let me give you an example, and some of these issues are in court, by the way, and some of those demands they have there. The Provident Fund. The Provident Fund does not only affect the members of the union or the association, CALPA. It affects all employees. We have pleaded with all employees. This company is in financial dire straits. Please give us time before we bring back the Provident Fund. All other employees have said, we understand, we'll be patient. We are asking the same of this association. Please be patient. This company has been relying on the taxpayer. We cannot go back to the taxpayer again and ask them, please help us fund our Provident Fund. We need to do that from our operations. And the operations have been picking up slowly but surely. So at this time, when operations have been picking up, our flights are filling up, we are now able to pay our salaries. We are able to pay some of the things. Give us time so that we build up enough cash so that we can fulfill the obligation.
How much time were you seeking?
So we gave them options, actually. We said, can we start slowly in January? Okay, or can we finish some because we owe them a lot of money. We owe employees a lot of money. So can we finish paying your other dues? And we were going to finish them in July and then start the Provident Fund in August. We gave them options. Or can we extend these payments that we're making for you every month and then start the Provident Fund? We gave them different options.
You say you owe staff money.
Yeah.
Explain.
So we owe staff money. Now, this is another thing as well. When we were negotiating for pay cuts during COVID, originally we had requested our staff and the unions that let's take pay cuts because company has no revenue. Okay, we spoke, and so they said, no, we cannot take pay cuts. What we'd like you to do is, yes, reduce our salaries, but then we defer that amount.
So it's deferred payment.
It's deferred payment. Okay, there is no other airline, and I think no other company which did that. Okay, now we are telling them.
So when you were talking about some people taking home 60% of their original pay, was it there was 80% for management, going all the way graduated
Correct.
up to, was it 30%?
Yes.
So that was all deferred.
Yes.
It was not a pay cut.
No.
You were to pay at a later date.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's what we are paying back right now. Okay. And in place of that, so we cannot pay that and the Provident Fund at the same time. That's what we've told them. Actually, employees pushed us, rightly so, pushed us to start paying the deferred pay. Because they said, the economy is in dire states, we don't have money.
Yeah.
So please pay us the deferred pay. Said, okay, fine. So we started paying the deferred pay. Employees were happy. Said, give us time. Let us finish paying this deferred pay before we start resuming the Provident Fund. But no, the union officials are saying, pay us everything. And I'm asking them, where do we get the money to pay you everything? This money has to come from somewhere, either from operations or from, I dare say, taxpayers. I don't have the right conscience to go back and say, please give us money so we can pay a Provident Fund. Yet we are paying deferred pay. That is the reason we're having. I mean, in the 5 hours, the negotiations that we're having, I put it to the CS, said, CS, this is what it will mean for us to fulfill all this demand. Are you going to be willing to give us money? And of course they can't. There's drought that we're taking care of. There is the economy we're trying to revive. So,
When you've been repaying these deferred salaries, are you paying at the same rate to everybody, or are there cadres that are receiving a higher percentage in terms of repayment?
So the way we did it, the way we're doing it is we are paying the deferred pay of 2021, which we have actually we're about to finish. Okay?
Yeah.
So those ones who got, let's say, 20% pay cut or deferred pay are getting back their 20%. Those ones who got 50 and so on and so forth. But what we also did is there is the very lowest cadre of staff. Those ones we covered because it's not much. And then for every one of us, we're paying as we go.
So everybody is getting the pay that they got deferred.
Yes.
So for example, the CEO who had an 80% reduced pay is getting repaid at 80%.
Yes.
Could that be a bone of contention then? That they're looking at and seeing the CEO is getting his salaries paid so fast, and yet...
How can that be a bone of contention? Everybody is being paid at the rate at which they were deferred. So how can it be a bone of contention?
If somebody wishes to find fault, believe me, they will.
Yeah.
Okay? And it doesn't matter how sensible and reasonable you sound. If one is stuck on a particular point, it means that the agenda may not be the issue that is actually being discussed. It's something else. Because from what I hear you say, there is logic to it. And if I look at the individuals you've mentioned, the groupings who've come to talk about it, it means this matter has been taken with utmost seriousness at all levels of government.
Yes.
If the Secretary General of KOTU, the body that oversees all unions, can wade into this discussion, then it means it's been taken seriously. Now, before I ask the question, I want to ask, just so that I understand, how many planes does Kenya Airways have?
Round about 41.
41.
Yeah.
How many pilots do you have?
400.
Okay. Explain to me so that I can understand. No, I need to understand.
Yeah.
There is rationale for this, I'm sure.
Yes, it's
okay?
rationale, yeah.
Yes. So how 41 planes, 400. So it's 10 pilots per plane. And then there's one spare.
Okay.
Alan, you should see where he's going with this question.
Yeah.
No. Listen. Okay, so first of all, That is within the international standards of aviation. Okay, so let's just be clear that it's not abnormal. Secondly, there's reason to that, like you said.
That's what I want to understand.
Yeah. So the way pilots operate, the way they fly, there's requirements from a safety point of view on how long they need to rest, when they need to rest, the days they need to take off, how many pilots need to be on an aircraft, for how long, purely for safety reasons. So if you take all that into account and our schedules, you will see that we do require those number of pilots, because let me give you an example. So pilots that are leaving from Nairobi for 8 hours, fly into London, okay, they have to lay over in London for rest. Then we have pilots,
and those are two pilots.
Yeah.
So two pilots take off JKIA to London Heathrow.
Yeah. To London Heathrow. Then they land in London Heathrow. We have pilots who are stationed in London, who will now board that aircraft and fly back. Okay? There is a minimum rest requirement for those pilots who have laid off in London. And when those ones who come back to Nairobi also require minimum rest.
Okay.
All this for safety purposes.
All right.
So in the matrix of pilots versus aircraft, all those equations have been taken into account, and so it is within international standards. So we're not overemployed. Let me just answer the question shortly.
So is this the bare minimum, or is it an optimum figure?
It is an optimum figure.
It's an optimum figure.
Correct.
Could we do with less?
Yes, we could, but
what would we compromise?
No. So we need to do. There's something we call productivity. Increasing productivity.
Yes.
How we train our pilots, how we promote them, because our pilots, the way our training is scheduled, is such that if it is made a little bit more efficient and targeted to the types of aircraft, then we could spend less time in training and more time flying, for example. As a result of which, then they can fly more, and we will need probably slightly less. So yes, it could be optimized, but it needs discussion. We need to look into the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, and agree with the pilots, to change some of the clauses in the CBA to make it a little bit more productive for them. So yes, it can be optimized.
Allan, you did mention, and I think you've mentioned a number of times in the last 20 or so minutes, that this, number one, the strike is illegal and that the demands are illegal. What is the element of illegality in all of this that's happening? And then what does it mean? Because on one side, if we look at the other side, we've got thousands of passengers who are stranded in and outbound. We have an impasse. We've talked about, 300 million shillings a day being lost by the carrier, minimum, and likely going to 1 billion by the end of today, isn't it? But then you also speak of an illegality. What's illegal about this action?
Yeah. All right. I didn't mention that when the pilots went on strike, when we tried to mediate, through ministry and so on and so forth, and we saw they were being belligerent, we decided to go to court and get an injunction, which we did, which we served on them.
And the injunction was to preempt strike?
Yes, not to take this action, strike action. Because a strike is a constitutional right, okay? It's a guaranteed constitutional right. But the right, of course, has to be within some, it has to be legal.
Yeah.
So we went to court, got the injunction, we served the injunction on them, and communicated to them that this strike, many times, not once, not twice, several times, that this strike is unlawful. By the way, the lawyers told me it's supposed to be unlawful, not illegal. I don't know what the difference is, but it's unlawful, okay? So we communicate. So that's the part that we're saying this strike is unlawful and it's unprotected. And we've told them many times. The CSS have told them the government has told them many times. I have heard them say that there is no strike in Kenya which is legal. And therefore, we don't care for the court order. Okay? That, in my opinion, we cannot live in that kind of society. We have got to obey the rule of law. one of the things that they have said in their memorandum or in their list of grievances is that we are victimizing the CALP officials. Okay, they have listed 4 people.
Yeah.
And that is not true, but anyway, they have listed the 4 people, saying we are victimizing them, they're claiming we didn't follow procedure or whatever. Okay, now they are asking us also, they are saying that we have broken certain rules. Okay, CBA rules, we've broken KCAS, which is the regulation rules. Okay, they're accusing us of impunity. Now, you tell me, breaking or contempting the contempt of court, a court order, a lawful court order, isn't that impunity? Isn't that impunity? A lawful court order. You say, I don't care for it. I am above the law or whatever you're saying, and then I'll go.
There's where they're coming from. In this country, every time any union wants to go on strike, especially one that's dealing with the government, be it doctors, be it nurses, be it now pilots, be it anybody, there always will be a court injunction telling them don't go on strike. And they will go on strike, and the government will keep shouting that this is an unlawful and unprotected strike. But the strike will continue. So they have history to look at.
Okay.
But let's take a break. We'll talk more about this. It's 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Allan Kilavuka is the group managing director and CEO of Kenya Airways. We are talking about the strike by pilots that's taking place at Kenya Airways. He says some 19 flights are back in operation today. They're flying to various destinations, and they're trying to resolve this as they still have conversations with the Kenya Airline Pilots Association and the government and other stakeholders. What will it take to resolve this KQ impasse?
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
With Allan Kilavuka, the group managing director and CEO of Kenya Airways, what will it take to resolve this KQ impasse? Allan, many times we have had pilots raising issues, and it's one with regards to the CBA and two with regards to management of the airline. And they say they are heavily invested in this airline. They are patriotic Kenyans. They want to continue serving through this airline, but they feel that the management is taking the airline in a different direction, and yet they would like to see a change. Do you at some point sit back and hear, well, there are areas where the pilots have suggestions and ideas where we can sit and actually adopt some of these ideas?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Indeed, it is true. First of all, a majority of the pilots, a large majority of the pilots, are professional, of course, they're very well trained, very highly skilled. Kenyan pilots are very highly skilled as well. Now, in as far as ideas, many pilots have given me many ideas. Let me give you an example. Pilots have walked into my office and said, I want to take charge of this particular project. For example, we have a project with the United Nations. The United Nations project that we're running is run by a pilot. Okay? He's in charge of that project. In other words, how can you do more business with the United Nations? Mm-hmm. There's another pilot who stepped in during COVID and was part of the innovation hub, what we have set up, an innovation hub. So we do have pilots who come in, they offer support, they offer suggestions, and we take them in. In the pilot union did give suggestions, not to me, I think to the media, and they sent it out and they were agitating for certain things. Of course, some of those things that they put in the suggestions are good things. Most of them were implementing them anyway. And so, of course, we welcome, not just the pilots. When you're saying the pilots are saying they're heavily invested, it's true. They're heavily invested because, that's what they do, they fly. But also remember, we have 3,400 other people who are also heavily invested in the organization. We have cabin crew, we have technicians who, fix the aircraft. We have professionals in the back office who do the same. So everyone is heavily invested. Everyone is just as important as the pilots when it comes to having a stake in the Kenya Airways.
They say they'd like to see a pilot heading the airline.
They'd like to
see a pilot heading the airline.
I mean, if a pilot, of course, if a pilot has sufficient managerial expertise, yes, there are certain airlines who have pilots running the airline. The latest, the one that I know, off the top of my head, Congo Airways had a Captain Kasongo, who was the CEO of Congo Airways. Unfortunately, it's no longer operating. But Captain Kasongo was CEO of Kenya Airways. Congo Airways.
Yes.
Yeah, we have different Air Baltic. There's a captain there, a CEO. So yes, of course, if there's a pilot, but that does not mean that only a captain or a pilot can lead the airline. Many other people can, because this is a managerial task.
You know, when I hear conversations about how heavily invested they are in and the work they have put in, well, I guess everyone, those of us who are in this studio, could say we're also very heavily invested in this particular organization and in this show. But even as we say this, I need to understand how an airline actually functions. And let me ask you what it is that I need to understand, okay? My reading tells me that I cannot wake up in the morning and go to a shop on Mombasa Road and point at a plane and say, I want to buy that plane. How much is it? And I write a check. I'm told it is leased.
Well, you can buy it as well
if you have the money. All right, now, of the planes we have in Kenya, let me start there. Let me explain. Let me give you a background as to why I'm going about this. Most people who talk about being heavily invested in an organization, apart from just being paid, they probably want to be part of the owners of that particular organization in one way or the other. My thinking. So let me ask the question. Who owns our planes?
There are two types. There are planes that we own as Kenya Airways, which we are paying. Of course, we have a loan, so we're paying back the loan.
That lease that I spoke of.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is called a finance lease.
Finance lease.
So we have a group of those aircraft. There are two which we fully own. We paid off. We fully own those ones. Then there's another group of planes which we hire. It's called an operating lease. Okay, so those ones are owned by lessors, international lessors, and their job is to buy a lot of aircraft, and then they lease to different airlines. So those are the two types of aircraft. But let me guess where this question is going to. There's been a lot of talk and rumors, because unfortunately we Kenyans like rumor mongering.
We love,
right?
We love.
Yeah, we love gossip, rumor mongering, conspiracy theorists, and so on.
Completely.
So, but let me burst the bubble of the rumor mongers and so on in this particular case. I'm telling you, the operating leases, the finance leased aircraft are owned. So the operating leases are owned by international lessors. The lease is public. The ones we financed from, we bought this aircraft financed by renowned banks, Citibank, JP Morgan, Afri-Exim, Standard Chartered, Nedbank South Africa, China Development Bank, and so on. And again, we've published it in our financials. But Kenyans want to look for conspiracies to find out what exactly, who is behind this.
So what are you saying? So the planes that we own, that we own,
fully own are only two. Yeah.
The ones that we are repaying,
yes,
the loans. Yeah. You're saying we have borrowed directly from these financial institutions.
Okay, not directly,
not through intermediaries.
No, not directly.
Okay.
Well, those banks, the ones I mentioned, what they do, they set up special purpose vehicles, okay? Because they don't want to own an aircraft. They are banks, okay? And this happens in both aviation and maritime.
Yeah.
You set up a special purpose vehicle. In our case, one is called Savo, another one is called Samburu.
Yeah. Now,
Savo is the one for the Dreamliners. Samburu is the one for the Embraers. And Eric, this kind of special purpose vehicles has happened over time in Kenya. As we have had Ndovu, Simba, those names.
All right.
But Kenyans, when they see and in fact I'll say something that I hope is hilarious, but when they see those names, they say, this one must be owned by Samburu is owned by say a Maasai, for example.
This one is Maasai.
Yeah.
There's a Ma.
And they think of a name and they say this one.
Yeah, this one. Now, another ridiculous one that I had was our aircraft. They have registrations. Yeah. So we have 5Y, KQ something, or 5Y FFM, 5Y FFY, whatever. And so someone said, oh, no, this 5Y FF, FF means fast family.
Right.
I mean, we like conspiracy. There's what is there? What is hidden? Who is there?
Do you know the beneficial owners of these special purpose vehicles?
I've just told you they were set up by the banks
Themselves?
Yes.
So they're 100% controlled and owned by the bank?
Yes.
All right. The ones where we lease the aircraft from. Tell us about that.
The ones
Who do we lease the aircraft from?
Okay.
These lessors.
The
Who are
lessors.
they?
Most of these lessors, we have 12 lessors.
Right.
Most of the lessors are based in Dublin, in Ireland. Okay. There are 12. Some of them are huge, like AirCap. AirCap has probably 2,000 aircraft. Okay, and they lease to different airlines. There are some which are smaller, which maybe have 200 aircraft. But all of them are international lessors, okay, which we lease from. Now, the challenge that we have had in the past is when we are leasing from these international lessors, because we are leasing only maybe 4, 5, 3 aircraft, it's more difficult for us to get the best deal possible, compared to the larger airlines which can lease 400, 200, and so on and so forth. Okay, so their scale is big enough for them to drive a bigger bargain. Having said that, we have spent the last 8 months negotiating with those lessors to bring down the lease cost. Okay, and we worked very hard. And I've reported before, we now have been able to get about 20% off our leases from next year. Starting from January, we'll be able to enjoy the 20%. So that is part of our cost optimization efforts going forward.
So are you saying, Allan, I'm just going to ask you this one directly, because there are people who have said that there are people who are benefiting from all these things that happen at Kenya Airways, whether it's making money or it's not, it gets money from the government. This money then goes to pay some shadowy contractors here and there, whether they're leasing planes to us, whether they're servicing our planes, whether they're offering extra services. Are you saying that there is nothing untoward at all?
There is nothing untoward at all. There is no systematic scheming that is taking place. The problems in Kenya Airways, so that it is very clear, are well documented. Okay, one is we have a problem with some of our fleet, and the decisions that were made in good faith, but we have kind of a misfit in some of our fleet. All right, that is we're dealing with. So, for example, we have the 777-300ER, which is too big for our network currently, which we're subleasing to Turkish. That particular aircraft is costing us a lot of money. We're trying to remove it from our fleet. Okay, there are actually 2 of them. There are actually 3. One is owned by us, the other 2 are leased. So those ones, we are trying to get them off our fleet. This other problem that we have is our high costs, generally high costs.
Yeah.
And I just explained what we're doing with the leases, for instance. Citi was asking me about pilots, and I was talking across our airline, we need to be more productive. Okay, do more with the same number of people or even with less people. Do more with the resources we have or even with less resources. So we need to be more productive. The other thing is we need to when you look at productivity, we have to look at the CBA. Okay, and see how we can help each other for this airline to improve.
What about the CBA would you like changed?
No, I mean, there are certain clauses. I don't want to prosecute that case here because we send our proposals to CALPA. We send them in August, ask them to consider those clauses because it's a negotiation back and forth. And so we're waiting for them to come back. I don't want them to accuse me to come here. I'm coming here to prosecute our case, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the things within the CBA, which, again, you initially said that you have no problem with. So what stops that from going into effect immediately? If we're saying, look, I mean, because we saw the statement and the fellow said, look, we're ready to go back to work even today, but will you look at some of these things? So if the CBA, for example, there's no problem with that, what's wrong with putting that into effect and letting them go back to work as you discuss some of these other things?
Okay.
Which they did, which again, I'm just going to come back and reiterate, they did say as well, look, even if you tell us today that we are ready to look at some of these things, let us have a conversation, we're ready to go back to work.
I think if you read the statements that I have made, the Ministry of Transport has made, and the Ministry of Labour has made, we have given concessions. I have said it earlier, the pilot unions have communicated to their members, I've seen that communication, saying that we have conceded to 90% of their demands. Okay, and in fact, we've even in our proposal we've said here is a framework that we want to put into place so that we can address some of the issues that you are raising. But they have said no. They have come back to the original demand, one of which is get rid of the CEO. Okay?
What did you do to them?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
He's against the CBA. I mean, if I were a unionist.
No, I'm not against the CBA, actually. Let me say that. I'm just saying, can we look at the CBA to see what can make it more productive? That's all I'm saying. Okay? I'm not saying I'm not against the CBA. I mean, they have a right to have a collective bargain agreement. All workers have a right to. But I'm saying, and we can work together, right? You take this here, put it here. No, for the sake of the airline, the airline has to get out of where we are today, and we have put together measures to do that. So it's a back and forth. It's a give and take. It's a good faith discussion. But if you come to a negotiating table and you're saying it's my way or the highway, you will never make progress. And that is where the problem is. The CALPA union officials have come to the table with a list of demands and they have not moved.
So is there some give on your side?
Oh, yes.
Are you loosening of this tether to say that, okay,
yes.
guys, we can actually do this? Is this being communicated to them and they've made do they have an understanding of exactly what you're saying, or is this shrouded in some kind of ambiguity when it says, okay, well, we could... Are you very clear on what we can do for folks to go back to work today, 7th of November, Monday?
No, let's say this to you. Maybe I'm not believable, okay? Because I'm an interested party. But okay, don't believe me. Read the Ministry of Transport and Labour, because they sat in the room and listened to how much we were giving and how much belligerent the CALPA officials were. Listen to them. Don't believe me, but okay, believe the Ministry of Transport, because they were arbiters. They were trying to break the impulse. I'll give you an example. On Saturday, or actually I should say Sunday, we slept, me and my team slept at 2 a.m. Trying to put together a return to work formula, so they had sent us their demands, which again, like I said, they have never changed. So we put together a proposal, and through the ministry, we sent it to CALPA. They went back to the original demands. I mean, it's very difficult. To be honest, it's very difficult for me. And which begs the question, what exactly is the intention of this strike?
Are you addressing that original demand of theirs? Because probably they keep coming back on that original demand, because everything else you're addressing is not what they're asking for.
No, the original
If,
demands...
for example, the issue number one, like I've seen in their statements, the Staff Provident Fund.
Yes.
Issue number two is the stuff that you're putting under disciplinary action. Issue number three is looking at the management, CEO plus chief pilot plus others, all right? And those others, and then the full implementation of the CBA.
Okay.
Have you dealt with the Staff Provident Fund? Have you looked at the disciplinary issues?
Let me answer them in brief, because I know we also don't have a lot of time. Start with the Staff Provident Fund. Okay. First of all, that matter is in court. Okay, so I need to be careful how I'm responding to it. Staff Provident Fund, okay, they have asked for us to implement it immediately. We've told them we can implement it immediately, but it will compromise your deferred pay. Remember, I tried to explain the deferred pay.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it is within the bounds of affordability. We're not saying no. Every worker in Kenya Airways has a right to Provident Fund. Okay? So, yes, we can, but it will have to compromise on profitability. And let me say this as well. Remember the other stakeholders in Kenya Airways. We have another 3,400 employees. The other 3,400 employees are telling us, no, we want to continue with the deferred pay until you finish, and then you open the Provident Fund. So there's a difference of what is needed. So we've given that proposal.
Okay.
We've even given 2 other proposals. Or we could do this, or we could do that. Okay. So that has been addressed.
Okay.
Okay. They asked us to back pay to July, and we're telling them it is going to be too burdensome on the company. We cannot afford it. Okay. So that is what victimization. Those 4. Okay. Every employee, including myself, we have got to subject to ourselves to the rules of the company. I'll say this, and I also don't want to talk in detail about this, but 2 of those people that they're saying we victimize, okay, they're not fit to fly as pilots. We call it fit in terms either mentally or they failed their test and so on. They're not fit to fly as pilots.
They don't meet the standards that are set.
Yes, and we took them through a process where CALPA was involved. We took them through a process. Now, how are you asking us to bring back people who are not fit to fly?
I mean,
how?
They were not fit then. There's no remedying process where they can now be...
Can it be reviewed?
Yes, they can be regurgitated and they can now become fit.
Okay, and on this particular matter, I'm guided by my safety office, okay, because this is an important thing for safety of an airline. When you bring in a pilot, you need to make sure that you've covered the safety elements. Yeah. And as far as my safety department has advised, is that it is not advisable to bring them back.
When you're burning the midnight oil on Saturday and Sunday, what was your proposal on this particular matter?
No, we said on this one, we unfortunately we can. Oh, so there are 4.
Yeah.
Okay. On one of them, we said, you can bring them back. All we need for that one is clearance from the regulator, and we'll bring them back even tomorrow.
Okay.
But on the other 3,
the Civil Aviation Authority.
Yes, Civil Aviation Authority. Sorry, Civil Aviation Authority.
The other 3.
The other 3, 2 of them are unfit, so unfortunately we can't do. One of them was taken through a disciplinary process, including a High Court ruling. So we unfortunately cannot do anything about it. Okay, we can go blow by blow, but it will take a long time. All I'm trying to demonstrate is that of the 4 items, the only one we told them is outside their remit, is trying to decide who should be CEO and who should be manager for this. That one we will not even entertain.
Allan, let me just ask, this safety team that you have, who is it comprised of? Who are the people who are in the... And what is their qualification? What is it that they have that makes them amply able to be in charge of the safety elements of
No, they are trained. They're trained. I mean, and everybody actually who is doing, I have got a training as well on safety and so on. So the safety department is headed by a director of safety who is trained, as in fact he's a pilot himself. Then there are other people there.
That is the question. You've answered my question. So essentially, there are pilots within that particular safety department.
Yes, pilots, cabin crew, people who are trained.
So people who essentially are part and parcel of the industry.
Yes.
People who have served in the industry.
Yes.
People who understand how the industry works.
Correct.
Okay. Now this one, you can defer the question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think that some of these leaders of the pilots union have a certain sense of entitlement? Because that's what I'm hearing. Because everything you've been saying, I'm thinking, wait, but how much do you expect someone to give? I mean, there seems to be reason here, but they keep insisting. So the only thing that it points to is an entitlement. Because we are pilots, we are demanding, and you need to listen to us because we are pilots. And when we speak as pilots, you must do what we say because we are pilots.
And you can't fly the plane.
And you can't fly the plane yourself. We know you can't fly it, but we are the one. This is what I'm hearing.
You're putting me in a difficult situation.
Yes, I know I am. That's why I said you can defer the question. You don't have to answer it.
But to be honest, some of the comments that the pilot officials have made are really unfortunate. Like some of the ones you've just said yourself. We're the ones who fly the plane. This airline cannot fly without us. Let's see what they will do without us. Those kinds of things. Everybody in the airline is important. Even the groomer, the person who cleans the aircraft, is just as important. The people who take care.
But they're not pilots.
Final question, Allan.
And just I want to say this. Let me. I mentioned earlier, kind of in passing, but I just want to insist on this point. There are people, the 3,800 employees, including the pilots, have sacrificed a lot. I get it. Okay? But everybody has sacrificed. We would call them non-pilot staff. We've explained to them, particularly about the Provident Fund. They have understood. My plea is, why then can't the CALPA officials understand? It is about affordability. It's not about denying them. It's about affordability. That's all it is about.
It's where you are right now.
Yeah.
In about 30 or 40 seconds, Alan, just tell us what is the management doing or planning to do over the next couple of days to resolve this issue?
Yeah. So we have made our pleas. Fortunately, I have seen a few pilots are returning to work, which is the right thing to do. And I'm urging them to do it quickly because the window of opportunity is closing. Yeah. So they need to come back very quickly to work. Let us bring our airline back to where it's supposed to be. We were doing well. Let us try and remove the embarrassment that we are seeing at the airport and fly these people out. The window of even having further discussions is actually also closing. Yeah, because at some point we have to get back to normalcy. And I have to say they have disobeyed a court order, and I think that has its consequences.
Thank you. Allan Kilavuka is the Group Managing Director and CEO of Kenya Airways, talking about the impasse with Kenya Airways and the pilots.